So in this video, I'm going to be going over all the different kinds of starting items, which mastery to take when, and what item builds are most optimal. And keep in mind that this video is only going to be relevant for so long because eventually there's going to be some major updates to the game and they might change things around a little bit. So as of right now, as of 7.16, um, this video is relevant and it will work, but it could be outdated in the future. So first off, the champion pool of the top lane can be divided into like I think about 5 different categories. So the first category is tanks, and tanks are just champions that have a lot of CC, are extremely hard to kill, and don't do much damage. And these are champions like Maokai, Sion, Mundo, Malphite. They don't do much damage. They're really tanky, and they win games by just being a shield and by peeling and by engaging fights and sitting on the front line. The next category of champions is duelists, and duelists are champions that want to fight with other duelists. They are very strong in 1v1s. They can, if they're fed enough, 2v1, and these guys are also hyper carries as well. If they get ahead early, they deal so much damage and they can run down people very well as well. So, for example, like Fiora and all these champions too have counterplay to them. Um, because like they're not long range champions like Jace or Teemo or Quinn who are just harassers, and that's the next category. Harassers are champions that like um, want to try to poke down Riven. Harassers are champions like Pantheon, Gnar, Kennen, Gragas, even Teemo, Jace, who all just sit back from afar and just try to zone try to zone Riven off of the wave. That leaves us with another category called Duelist with Harass. So that would be champions like Yasuo, Jarvan, Gangplank, who all have like long range abilities that outrange Riven's kit. So like Yasuo's Tornado, sometimes even Yasuo's Q early game, Jarvan's Q, Gangplank's combos and his Q, Wukong's Q, Kled's Q, Olaf's Q, Urgot, I don't know what his abilities are, and Akali's Q. All these champions are duelists, so that like Riven can fight with them and trade with them, but they have a lot of harass, and Riven can't really trade with harassers until they use their abilities. So that's like the difference between these two. And then duelists, Riven can trade with anytime she wants to, as long as it's safe, and as long as it's efficient. And tanks, same thing. Tanks are kind of like duelists. And then the last category is going to be special. And the reason why it's like different from any of these is because against all of these champions, Riven should win 100% of the time, unless there's mid lane help or jungle help. But against these champions, Riven has no excuse of losing against, because there's a certain way to play against each of these champions in a way that there's no way for the other champion to counter Riven. So what I'm basically saying is that Riven is the complete counter to all of these champions as of right now. Because once again, if the meta changes and if one of these champions get an update or a buff, this might not be true. But as of right now, Riven can beat any of these champions. And I've already explained the Jax matchup in a previous video, but I'm going to be working on these other. And I think I also explained the Darius matchup. I might explore it a little further, but yeah. And then okay, so basically, so now that we know like the top all the top lanes, what categories they fit into, we're going to be looking at what starting items you take against which category. So against tanks and special, so like the guys you always should be beating, and tanks, you're gonna want to take longsword and refillable. So the one of the ways you beat tanks is you have to be as gold efficient as possible, because tanks are extremely hard to kill. So you want to get as much DPS as possible, and to get as much DPS, you need as much gold as you can to get items. So instead of going longsword and 3 potions, it's best to go longsword and refillable because it's just so gold efficient. The refillable potion you can use over and over again, and you can also sell it. And I think it's a lot better than um, longsword and 3 potions, because if you take longsword and 3 potions, you're automatically like you're letting taking longsword and refillable makes you play more careful because you don't have as much HP to work with, which is a good thing because you won't play as recklessly as you would with longsword and 3 potions. Um, so these champions are basically the only time you're gonna take longsword and refillable against, because once again, like against like a Malphite or a Mundo, like or maybe like any of these champions, they can't really trade with you unless you let them, excluding the special. But like if you're against a Malphite or a Mundo or a Siren or Maokai, they can't really do anything against you. Because they don't do as much. They don't really do that much damage. Um, and they can't really take trades until you overextend. Like Maokai really doesn't have any harass. Sion kind of does, but it doesn't do much damage compared to other champions up here. Like basically, like you'll never be in a situation where Maokai can 100 to 0 you. So if you take longsword and if you're losing against a tank, that's okay because longsword's so gold efficient and you won't be punished like later in the game. And then so when you're against duelists, so that's champions like Fiora, Irelia, Camille, you're gonna want to go Dorn's Blade because it's just so stat efficient, and against duelist against duelists you want to just have base stats. Like that's your main priority. You want to be able to bring as much damage and as much sustain to the table as possible. So going Dorn's Blade helps with that. Um, Going longsword and refillable, it makes you too squishy. You need the extra health and you need the little sustain. And going Dorn Shield is a little overkill. You don't need that much defense against duelists because you also want to be able to deal damage yourself. Um, and then finally, you're going to take Dorn Shield against harassers and duelists with harass. So like that would be for any of these champions. All of these champions have ways to poke Riven when they have distance. So like Riven, so like for example, the Gnar can Q Riven, and there's nothing Riven can do about it. Like the Riven can't like counter trade. So for example, like if the Fiora wants to Q Riven, the Fiora has to put herself at risk and is most likely going to take damage from the Riven. Does that make sense? But if a harasser wants to deal damage to Riven, they can from a distance, and Riven can't really counter trade if they're at a distance. Um, and that's true for all of these champions. So that's why you want to take Dorn Shield. Even in some of these champions are duelists like Gangplank, but it's you and Wukong even in Kled, but you still want to take Dorn Shield because if they harass you a lot early game, having the Dorn Shield's passive and extra health is really beneficial and will save you the lane. Um, so now that you know what starting items you're gonna take, now you need to know what masters you take. Um, so basically, against champions like Gangplank, Alawi, Teemo, Chase, the champions that like you need that you're gonna take short trades against and need burst, you're gonna want to take Thunderlords. So basically, Thunderlords is really good for taking short trades because it deals the most burst damage. Um, and vice versa, Fervor is really good for long trades that you fight someone for a very long time with because the Fervor benefit stacks up over time. So whenever you're against a duelist or a tank, so like Maokai, Sion, Irelia, Camille, um, Yasuo even, you're going to want to go Fervor because you're going to be fighting all of these champions for a very long time, especially the tanks. Like Gragas, Malphite, Mundo, you're going to be fighting those champions because they get really tanky. Um, and then again, and vice versa, against champions where you're going to be taking short little quick trades against and whittle them down, like Jax, Singed, and or against champions you need burst like Kennen, Teemo. You're gonna want to go Thunderlords because obviously it's more beneficial the shorter you fight someone. And then the last mastery page you're gonna want to have is a Storm Raiders page, and that's for Darius. And I've already explained the Storm Raiders. I'm sorry. I've already explained the Darius matchup in a previous video, but like I said, I might expand on it. But yeah. So this is the only time you're gonna take Storm Raiders Surge. So now that we know that, we need to talk about what items you want to get. So whenever you're against a squishy duelist, like a Fiora, a Yasuo, and you're completely destroying them, you can go Ghost Blade or Death Dance first. Death Dance is a very, very good item to start off with if you're doing very well, because it gives you so much sustain. There's a lot you can do with Death Dance when you go with first item because you can take camps, you can go for objectives and not worry about your health because it gives you so much sustain. Um, and it also lets you 2v1 very well because it gives you cooldown reduction, and the passive, the where it converts 30% of the damage into damage over time, is also very beneficial and it saves you a lot of times. I think Death Dance is one of the most broken items on Riven, and you should be looking to get it basically every game. Because it's just so strong and so good for her. And this is only when you're against a squishy duelist. And then the second item you'd probably want to go, if you went Death's Dance first, you'd want to go Black Cleaver or Ghostblade, and then vice versa. You went Ghostblade first, you want to go Death's Dance or Black Cleaver, depending on the situation, depending on what you feel is best. Um, so then if you're losing against a squishy duelist, so like once again like a Yasuo or Fiora or someone that does a lot of damage, um, you're gonna want to go Black Cleaver. That's gonna be your first item. But if you're losing very hard against like a Yasuo or something or a Fiora, you're gonna want to rush tabbies. If you're ever losing against a Fiora, getting tabbies first item makes it so that you're not like as easily one-shottable as possible. And then you also want to go Black Cleaver so that you get the cooldown reduction, and the health too if you're losing. And then second item, you're gonna want to go Death Dance. Once again, it's such a good item. Um, and then if you're winning against a tank, you definitely want to go Death Dance first item because, like I said, like it it's so beneficial because you can take super long trades and they don't have to be necessarily good, and then just sustain to full health with Death Dance if you're winning against a tank. Um, and that's how you can just abuse tanks by getting this item. Even if you're losing, I'd say if you get Death Dance second or third item, you should be stronger than the tank. That's how strong this item is. And then against a tank, you're never ever gonna want to go lethality like Ghostblade or the other one, Duskblade, because don't tanks will outscale those items, and then those items will become useless and not deal as much damage. So always go for like second item Black Cleaver. And then if you're losing against a tank, you can't really go Death's Dance first item because it leaves you squishy. That's the only downside to Death's Dance. So you have to go Black Cleaver first and then Death's Dance. Um, and then if you're winning against a squishy AP champion, so like an Akali or a Fizz top, going Ghostblade first item is really good. Because just for the damage, similar to how you'd go Ghostblade first item against a duelist, like a squishy duelist. And then second item, you're gonna want to go Hex Drinker for the most part. It once again it just depends on like how what their team comp is. If that's the only AP champion on their team, then maybe not. But if they have a lot of AP, then going Hex Drinker second early is going to be very nice. Uh, Especially against someone like a Heimerdinger, where you need to somehow sustain their burst. And then if you're losing or going even against a squishy AP champion, you're gonna want to go Hex Drinker first item because once again, like you don't want to get bursted, and going Hex Drinker first item just makes it so hard for the enemy champion to kill you. The shield's so nice and it gives you magic resist. It's just all around a really good item to get. Don't finish it though. You probably want to go Black Cleaver next, or maybe even Death's Dance, and then by the third item you should have your Maw completed. So this is basically your first and second item rushes, and then for like the later game and the mid game, you have to decide like what item is most needed in what situation, and that just depends on the game. That depends on several factors. But so like this is like basically a rule of thumb. If the enemy team has heavy AP, you're gonna want to go QSS for the magic resist, and most of the time AP champions have a lot of CC. Going Maw as a must. If they have like 3+ AP champions, you need Maw. It's so good, and Merc Treads you also probably want to get, as and you can even fit in the Spirit Visage as like the fifth or sixth item. It's actually not that bad, uh, especially if you're losing. It's a not bad an item. If you're winning and you want to snowball, then I wouldn't get Spirit Visage because it doesn't do any damage. But if you're losing, it gives a lot of tank. It also gives you a lot of magic resist, and the lifesteal bonus is really nice if you have a lot of lifesteal. Um, and if you're against a team with heavy CC, QSS is definitely needed. Even if they have like an Annie or a Vagar or TF, Going QSS is really, really nice because a lot of champions kits revolves around one key stun. So like, for example, TF spell rotation. He wants to get his gold card on you, and that perfectly lines up his Q. Or like with Annie, she wants to stun you and then use Tibbers in her W. So having QSS is extremely nice because you can completely outplay champions like Vagar who also need stuns. And the second they stun you, you just QSS and you can kill them. And another thing is with QSS, a lot of times, like a Vagar will put down his stun, and he'll think that he'll be safe because he thinks that you're about to be stunned. But if you QSS right away, that can most likely catch off the Vagar off guard, and you can go ahead and kill him. But like if a team has heavy CC and like they're trying to CC lock you, going QSS is really nice. Also, going Guardian Angel is very nice as well because once again, if they CC lock you and you get bursted down, having the Guardian Angel will let you revive, and hopefully they don't have their cooldowns anymore, and you can be relevant again. Or you can also make the enemy team waste all of their CC on you, and then you revive, and your team's fine to do whatever they want. And then going Merc Treads is also a must against a heavy CC team because of the effect that you get from it. And then against an enemy team that's going heavy AD, so like four AD champions, or maybe even all AD. So if they have like a Zed mid, AD top, AD jungle, like an Alistar support, ADC bot, you're gonna want to go Tabbies for sure. Tabbies is a must. You'd be foolish to not buy Tabbies. Thornmail, you might Knight's Vow you can also get, and GA is also really nice because it gives you some armor. But Knight's Vow, you can put on your ADC, and it's actually not that bad on Riven. It gives her some cooldown reduction, it gives her some health, and then the passive's also very nice, especially against an entire AD team. But once again, you have to decide for yourself what you think what item is best in what situation, and that depends on several variables and stuff. It's good to experiment with items and see what works and what doesn't. If you think a build might work, try it out, and experiment with it, have fun with it. And then so like this is basically other rules like items you can get. So like if you need to split push, or you want some damage, or some sustain, or you don't really know what to buy, you can always rely on Hydra. You can always rely on GA. They're good all around solid items. And if you're against an enemy team that's really tanky, or has a lot of lifesteal, like for example Vladimir, Soraka, Nasus, going Executioners is very smart because it puts the debuff on them that uh, decreases healing. Um, and that builds into I think one of these two. I'm not. Yeah, I think Mortar Reminder. Um, this is like an extremely strong, like well-rounded build. If you don't really know what to buy, you can kind of go this every game, but like of course, change it up a little bit depending on what you need. Having Merc Treads, Black Cleaver, Death Dance, Ravenous Hydra, Guardian Angel, and Merciful Scimitar are all like this build's like basically um, an extremely like impossible to kill Riven build because you get 40% CDR, you have so much lifesteal, you have so much damage, you have GA for the revive, you have Merc Sim for the QSS, and then Merc Treads or Tabbies depending on what their team is. Um, so your build should look something like this. Black Cleaver is basically always going to be in your build. Death Dance should always be in your build too, and then depending on what you need, will that will complete your build.